Hi, it's Steve here again. And this week, the content we're going to look at is in terms of what I'm calling figures of youth. So I'm going to break this up into four parts this week. I'm going to have a brief introduction into what I mean in terms of why this is an important thing to consider. And then I'm going to present an array of different figures of youth. And what I mean by that is the different ways that the very notion, the word, the representation of youth is used in different ways in different spaces. So, as I touched upon in previous week, about the introduction to youth studies and youth transitions, youth cultures, moral panics and the like. Youth is used in lots of different ways. The concept is used in lots of different ways. And I would say that it's kind of used and abused in all manner of different ways across different spaces, whether that's media and politics, whether it's even within youth studies. I think youth studies also has very different conceptions of youth. And often youth researchers, I think, are using such a different conception of youth that they're almost talking about different things. So what I'd like to do in today is kind of talk about how, if we think about youth and youths as different figures, different way that they're figuratively used in different contexts, it can help us kind of draw some of these problems out. The figurative method comes from Imogen Tyler's work in particular, so if you're interested in that, have a look at her excellent book, Revolting Subjects. And I think what this can do is help us realise that when we're talking about youth, we're sometimes talking about very different things, and we're often talking about different things based on our own research interests, our motivations, our theoretical perspectives and our methods. So by thinking about youth as different kind of figures, we can kind of cut across these different spaces: theory, methods, ontology and epistemology. And it's really important, otherwise, when we're doing research and we're trying to build knowledge, we're building, unless we have some kind of understanding of the figures that we're using in our research, we might be talking in different ontological and epistemological spaces. Ontology here being the philosophical study of things like the very nature of reality and being and existence. And epistemology is kind of a theory of knowledge that wants us to think about how our knowledge is valid or not, and the way our research methods plays into that validity and legitimacy, and whether the scope and method of what we're trying to claim from our research makes sense. So this is what I think the idea of figures of youth can help get us understanding the different ways that young people are considered in different spaces. So there's kind of some key overlapping differences in the way that youth is used and summoned throughout the social sciences. So it can be very different between different disciplines of knowledge, such as sociology, psychology, social work, anthropology, biology, education, and so on. And between those different disciplines, there'll be different conceptions going on between them, and also be different conceptions going on within them, and that's important to consider as well. There'll be different figures of youth being evoked in terms of the different methods we use. Those who do qualitative work, who go out into the world and interview and do ethnography and do participant observation and the like, and those that do more quantitative work that try and measure the lives of young people. There'll be a kind of different picture developed out of those different kinds of research. A different figure develops out of those research methods. There's those that draw and paint their own figures that try and critically engage with some of the kind of more dominant discursive and doxic ways that young people are presented in the media and in politics, and the ways that kind of different notions of youth are put to work to do different things, whether that's ideologically or whatever. So that's kind of within the social sciences, and then out in the kind of more policy world, there's different stakeholders in different sectors that influence policy that also draw on figures in different ways. There's different ways that youth are kind of represented in terms of collectives or as individuals. And there's certainly different cultural formations of youth, within and between cultures, particularly, between what we've come to call the kind of North and the South, the way that these things relate to space and time. So youth here means very different things in different contexts. And I think by painting and kind of sketching out the different figures, this can help us kind of bridge the gap between our research and get us to be able to talk to each other in much more clearer ways. So I want to present a kind of, I suppose, like a bit of a typology of different figures of youth in the rest of today's content. Paint an incomplete picture. I don't think I've got all the different figures covered here, and you'll see how they interrelate in various ways. But they kind of perform this assemblage, this feedback loop that is always there when youth are brought into being in different contexts, how they're governed and exploited, and how even in youth studies and social science research, young people are positioned. And I think hopefully that in the future, maybe by sketching out the figures of youth that we're using in our research, this will paint a clearer picture. So it'll show how we're in different ontological spaces, have a different, clearer conception of our research objects, help reduce confusion between different research projects, different researchers, different disciplines, and help us, I think, maybe mitigate against some of the things that I was talking about in the previous week, where Peter Kelly argued that maybe youth being an artifact of expertise in a constant position of institutionalised mistrust, that youth studies may well contribute to that, and hopefully by drawing out these differences and the problems between them, we can go some way to kind of alleviating that problem. Okay, that's the end of the first section, and we're going to come back in the second and third and fourth parts and present some specific figures of youth.